joined the $1 trillion club. CEO Jensen Huang's big bet on AI went from hand-delivering processors to Elon Musk and Sam Altman in 2016 to joining today's alpha pack of Silicon Valley. The first time Jensen Huang tried ChatGPT, he asked it to write a poem about his company. Huang, who'd made a bet more than a decade ago that Nvidia Corp's computer chips could serve as the brains for artificial intelligence, was pleased with the result. Nvidia rises to the challenge. With their powerful GPUs and AI, they push the boundaries of technology's edge. The robot poem was evidence, by his literary standards anyway, that the wager was finally paying off. For much of the past 30 years, Nvidia chips have been the main engine for ultra-realistic explosions and lush foliage in video games such as Call of Duty and Counter-Strike, but Huang strongly suspected they were also uniquely suited to sift through the massive datasets that artificial intelligence requires. To help test this theory, he instructed his team to build a server designed for AI and hand-delivered the first one in 2016 to Elon Musk and Sam Altman, the founders of OpenAI. Built as an AI supercomputer, the $129,000 rig was the size of a briefcase and contained 8 interconnected graphics processors that could digest in 2 hours what would take a traditional computer processor more than 6 days. Huang personally brought it to the startup's office as a gift, and as he gestured to the components, Musk beamed at the silvery box like a proud father. Since then, Musk and Altman had an acrimonious split, but they're aligned in one way: each has sought access to Nvidia chips for different projects. OpenAI released ChatGPT late last year, with a brain composed of more than 20,000 Nvidia graphics processors. In February, according to the research firm SimilarWeb Limited, the chatbot hit 100 million users, which would be a triumph for OpenAI if it weren't so expensive to run. Microsoft Corp has pledged more than $10 billion in funding, which will help cover rising computing costs, and Altman, the startup's chief executive officer, will need tons more chips from Nvidia to keep up with demand. Huang doesn't use ChatGPT much, he says, but signed up for the $20 a month version Altman's company offers. Nvidia chips are a critical component of the cloud infrastructure that Alphabet, Amazon and Microsoft use. Data center operators collectively spent $15 billion last year on bulk orders with Nvidia. You're going to see tons and tons of ChatGPT-like things, Huang says in an interview at Nvidia's headquarters in Santa Clara, California. This is basically a rebirth, a reinvention of computing as we know it. A week later, Huang showed investors what that rebirth means for Nvidia's business. Quarterly revenue from data centers, which Nvidia now calls AI factories, jumped 14%, to a record $4.28 billion. Its summer sales forecast was 53% higher than analysts expected, hurling its valuation past $1 trillion. It was only the 9th company ever to reach that mark. Overnight, Nvidia grew by almost the entire market cap of one longtime rival, Advanced Micro Devices Inc. AMD, and is now worth 7 times another, Intel Corp. At least 3 Wall Street analysts used the same word in the titles of their reports. Wow! How Huang orchestrated this transformation from video game chipmaker to AI pioneer is often attributed to his magical ability to see into the future. His deputies will explain it only with anodyne corporate platitudes. Ian Buck, vice president for high-performance computing, says Nvidia is a startup that acts as one team with no corporate politics, reciting versions of phrases 11 of his colleagues used in interviews. It sounded as if they'd been force-fed the same generic training data as ChatGPT. The reality is that Huang has been wrong almost as much as he's been right. Nvidia blundered its approach to smartphones, released several computer graphics cards that bombed, evangelized short-lived fads. Crypto mining is here to stay and got outmaneuvered by regulators and rivals on its $40 billion attempt to acquire the chip designer ARM Limited. Huang exhibits a deeply programmed sense of survival. It can involve coldly killing a project the millisecond he realizes Nvidia can't win or humiliating senior staff to make a point. He speaks with pride about almost going out of business 7 times and has been willing to take these risks again and again because they might eventually help him own the future of computing. Nvidia is suddenly at the core of the world's most important technology. It owns 80% of the market for a particular kind of chip called a data center accelerator, and the current wait time for one of its AI processors is 8 months. Many big tech companies are on Nvidia's backlog. But some of Huang's biggest customers have been designing their own custom chips for years, aimed at reducing their dependence on suppliers such as Nvidia. For now, they're hooked. Nvidia has to stumble for some reason to give a competitor a chance, says Chris Mack, an analyst at Harding Loevner LP, an investment company that owns about $160 million of Nvidia stock. There's no viable alternative. The thing that makes AI possible, the ChatGPT poetry, the software for cars that sort of drive themselves, The computer-generated photo of the Pope in a puffy jacket is the Ampere 100. Named after the 19th-century French physicist André-Marie Ampère, the chip is about the size of a matchbook. Its surface appears smooth until viewed under a microscope, revealing some 54 billion teeny components arranged in what looks sort of like a map of the Tokyo subway system. Nvidia's chip architect spent 4 years refining a digital blueprint of the A100 before sending the design off to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co. TSMC, or Samsung Electronics Company for production. When a prototype is ready, it's flown to the US and then, like a VIP, chauffeured from the airport to Nvidia's campus. There, it's ushered to a windowless lab lined with screens and cooling pipes hanging from the ceiling. Without adequate precautions, the chips can get so hot that they burst into flames. Engineers, whose job it is to bring these tiny firebugs to life, usually look as if they're terrified to the point of nausea as they plug the prototype into a test rig. They pray it turns on and goes as fast as it's supposed to. Any glitch might necessitate a silicon correction, or respin, which can take months and cost hundreds of millions of dollars in lost sales. Jonah Albin, Nvidia's senior vice president for graphics processor engineering, says there's no moment of triumph, only a declining sense of concern. Back when Huang founded Nvidia, concerns were only soaring. He was 30, had a master's degree in electrical engineering from Stanford University and had worked at various chipmakers, including AMD. He decided to start a company with 2 fellow engineers in 1993 after recognizing the need for specialized processors to improve the video games he loved. His excitement over Flight Simulator was palpable. But their initial chips, including one intended for the Sega Dreamcast game console, failed because they bet on a novel architecture that was unpopular with game developers. Nvidia was running out of cash one of his near bankruptcies, so Huang backed out of the Sega deal and abruptly changed course. He instead focused on a new chip designed for computers running Microsoft Windows and signed on Dell and Gateway as customers. Nvidia turned a $4.1 million profit in fiscal 1998, a golden age for computer games that included the releases of Half-Life and StarCraft. The company went public the following year. By 2006, Nvidia had shipped 500 million graphics processors and had its technology integrated into the Sony PlayStation 3 and Microsoft's first Xbox console. For most of this time, Huang dressed sort of like a Best Buy employee, a propeller head, as Apple Inc.'s then head of hardware engineering, John Rubinstein, describes him. Then one day he began wearing all black shirts, pants and a leather jacket and seemingly never changed. He alternates between cerebral revelations and disarming humor in interviews and at public events, but at the office he can be a furious boss who's prone to swearing, say 3 people who've been on the receiving end and asked not to be identified for fear of being sworn at again. One of them recalls how Huang, if he hasn't heard the right answer, will demand, frequently between expletives, that an executive retrieve the subordinate who can provide it. Then he'll wait, in a silent tantrum, checking his inbox until that person arrives or calls. Bob Sherbin, a spokesman for Nvidia, says retention among company leaders is high and they're fiercely loyal to Huang. They appreciate his humor and his passion for the company. And they know that he's hardest of all on himself. Almost every employee is required to submit by email their top 5 things, with that exact subject line, and many of them go straight to Huang. It should contain a concise summary of their pressing objectives, so he can keep track. The top thing for Nvidia during most of its existence has been to not get destroyed by Intel. Gaming helped Nvidia carve out a niche for its graphics processing units, known as GPUs. But Intel's central processing units, or CPUs, were for just about everything else. For decades, Intel was the world's biggest chipmaker. Its CPUs have been in most computers dating to the 1980s and swallowed a ludicrous 99% share of the market for data center processors. Intel's chips could do games too, but not as well as Nvidia's. Here's the difference. Let's say you're going to the grocery store. Your shopping cart is the CPU. You walk the aisles, load up what you need and head to the register. It's a perfectly normal way to buy your groceries. A GPU, however, is like hiring dozens of people with handbaskets. One gets your cereal, the other fruit, another toilet paper. Each shopper can't carry as much as the cart, but you can probably guess which approach would win at supermarket sweep. For almost the entire history of computers, this never really mattered, unless you were into video games or film editing. Nvidia's GPU could perform the specific and repetitive tasks required to load millions of pixels at once for a game of Grand Theft Auto. Intel's CPU, meanwhile, can bring up an Excel spreadsheet, run a web browser, play a YouTube video and so on. The GPU way of doing things is known as parallel computing, and Huang thought it could have a profound impact on the most challenging technical problems. In theory, connecting more GPUs together could dramatically expand the amount of data a system could work through in any given time period. It could, he reasoned, address what he said was the end of Moore's law. Conceived by Intel co-founder Gordon Moore in the 1960s, this law states that the number of transistors on a chip would double roughly every 2 years. That remarkably accurate forecast delivered massive increases in processor performance for a half-century, until things ground to a halt about a decade ago. Adding more Intel CPUs to data centers only metaphorically jammed up grocery aisles with shopping carts. Customers began to look around for other options in the 2010s, creating an opening for Huang, whose GPUs operating in parallel could be the perfect substitute for all that data crunching. But a huge obstacle for Nvidia was that almost all the code running on servers at the time had been written for CPUs, for Intel. Fortunately for Nvidia, Huang had a solution that was just coming to fruition. In 2006 he'd rallied his company to construct a new programming language called CUDA, an acronym for Compute Unified Device Architecture, that could expand the types of software Nvidia's processors could run. This idea was rather nuts. The CUDA team had to recreate basic computational processes that have long existed for CPUs, mathematical libraries, debugging tools, etc., which would enable developers to build software for a GPU's parallel processing capabilities. Huang soon mandated that all Nvidia's new chip designs be made compatible with CUDA, at huge expense. He touted on earnings calls the number of universities that were teaching CUDA, to the confusion of financial analysts and even some employees who couldn't grasp what all this had to do with gaming. That was the cash cow, says a former Nvidia vice president, who, like several others quoted in this story, asked to remain anonymous to avoid alienating Huang. And the world was not going to run out of teenage boys playing video games. An early experiment with CUDA took place at the bottom of the ocean. Western Gekka, a subsidiary of the oil company Schlumberger NV, worked with Nvidia staffers to optimize an algorithm to electronically scan beneath the seafloor for signs of oil deposits. They had so much data, they'd use helicopters to transfer it from the ships to where they compute it. All that data needed to be processed and turned into drill here, look here, literally, $100 million decisions. Using GPUs, initial tests of the resulting software were able to mine the data more than 6 times faster than the computers Western Gekka had used before. Solving such a gnarly problem proved that Nvidia's technology could do more than games, but it wasn't until an even bigger breakthrough arrived at an academic competition in 2012 that its full potential became apparent. A project called AlexNet set records for its ability to accurately recognize the contents of images. Its 15.3% error rate was more than 10 percentage points better than the next closest challenger. The neural network was trained with CUDA and 2 Nvidia GPUs. AlexNet demonstrated that AI powered by GPUs could perform some tasks at a level approaching human. When Huang took the stage at Nvidia's developer conference in 2014, an event billed as the Woodstock for computational mathematicians, he spent much of his keynote expounding on the future of AI. People went there expecting to see explosions and physics simulations the way that you usually got in Jensen's keynotes, says Brian Catanzaro, Nvidia's vice president for applied deep learning research. It totally blew everyone's mind. Please join us for part 2 of this story in the next video at Passive Income Journey 777.